Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to the webinar once again. Today with me on the set is Dr. Wali Montesser. He's a director for IRIMS. He's a specialist on waste and resource efficiency. Our second speaker for today will be Adrian Clues, who is the CEO of Henkley Associates. Henkley Associates is a UK company who is currently working in the e-waste industry here in Nigeria. To begin our discussions today, I will be focusing on the overview and framework of the Nigerian renewable sector. We will also take a closer look at the analysis of maximizing opportunities in Nigeria renewable sector. And of course, there's going to be the Henkley experience of setting up an e-waste recycling center in Nigeria. He's going to be giving the story so far. Having discussed that, we're going to be looking at the overview and framework. There are three basic things that we have to look around. The first thing we're going to be looking at is the population of Nigeria currently. We're also going to be looking at the GDP and, of course, the growing economy as it is. We all know that currently Nigeria is over 170 million people and also predicted to be 225 million by 2030. And of course, the GDP currently is $522 billion, placing Nigeria as the 26th largest in the world. Of course, is the fastest growing economy. Nigeria has a huge electricity demand and prospects for renewable energy solutions. Therefore, there's a strong need for the development of renewable sources. Nigeria needs more power generating capacity. The Renewable Energy Master Plan actually indicates that 728 megawatts of renewable capacity is required by 2015 and projected to be 12.9 gigawatts for 2030. Now the big question is this achievable? The Bloomberg report has stated that we have only achieved 62 megawatts, excluding large hydro. This brings us to the framework of the Renewable Energy Master Plan. And the Renewable Energy Master Plan aims to increase renewable energy supply from 13% to 23% by 2030. Also, the Renewable Energy Master Plan has high targets for electrification rates and is aiming a huge 75% by the year 2025. Again, we'll also look at some gaps around financial and construction and operational features, showing the targets around 2015. Probably it might be interesting for us to start looking at some of the things government is doing at the moment. So we look at fiscal and market incentives. Currently, we can categorize this into short and long terms. For the short term, government has put a halt on import duties of renewable energy technologies. And for the long run, we'll be looking at some capital incentives, a bit more of preferential loan opportunities for renewable energy projects. And some of these collaborations have been from the African Development Bank, of course, the Bank of Industry. These banks have been very supportive in terms of issuing some of these incentives to companies who are currently working in the renewable sector. Let's look at some steps in the right direction. So what is government doing at the moment? At the moment, government has been able to establish a stable investment climate, or they are looking at establishing a stable investment climate by engaging with private sector, like, again, the World Bank, International Finance Corporation, investment guarantee agencies. All these agencies and corporations have actually supported energy projects currently in Nigeria to the tune of $1.7 billion. It will also interest us to know that under the Power Africa Initiative, the Power Africa Initiative is actually launched by the US President, and this platform has awarded over $500,000 loans to clean energy companies. Going further, it will be good for us to begin to look at some investment highlights. So some of the opportunities around renewable. For today's discussion, we're just going to take three sides of it. So we look at biomass, we look at solar, and of course we're also going to look at recycling opportunities. My other speakers will be putting a lot of emphasis on the recycling opportunities. Talking about biomass, we might look at some energy consumption. If we look at the graph or the pie chart what we have there, you find out that traditional solid biomass and waste has a huge percentage, and that tells us that, that there's a lot of use of biomass for off-grid heating, for cooking. They have a high share percentage, and you know that tells a lot compared to oil, compared to natural gas and hydro. Still on energy consumption, approximately 100 million people in Nigeria have no access to electricity, so it's quite key that we begin to think about renewable energy sources of a way of supporting electricity in Nigeria. We may want to look at some indicators around biomass. In 2007, interestingly, Nigerian biofuel policy was released with a national demand of 5.1 million liters generated yearly. Over $3.86 billion have been invested for the construction of ethanol, biorefineries, and over 30 projects are existing at the moment. Equity fund arrangements have reached up to $50 million for the establishment of biofuel industries in Nigeria. Let's look at solar at the moment. Federal government's objective really is to increase capacity to 40,000 megawatts by the year 2020. So far, privatization transactions within the Nigerian power sector is about $3 billion. And a further $300 billion investment is speculated for the Nigerian solar power industry. This is quite significant. And this takes us to, I'd like to state here that, you know, Nigeria has 31 megawatts of PV, which is currently under construction, as against its goals of about 600 megawatts of PV and solar thermal. Still on solar, just to mention that French oil giant Total targets to build and generate 1,000 megawatts of solar power. The Koreans are also investing to a huge tune of $30 billion in solar power plants. They are aiming to produce 10,000 megawatts solar power. This is, you know, ongoing at the moment. Same thing for Sky Power in a joint venture with FAS Energy. They are also building a 3,000 megawatts utility scale solar power, which is already ongoing. So there's a lot of activities happening around the renewable industry, and so we can just move forward. Let me just highlight a few things around recycling opportunities. Like I said before, my colleagues, other speakers today will be showing a lot more on the activities around recycling. But it would be very good to note that over $200 million of recycled metal waste is exported from Nigeria, and of course generating over $250 million in profit around 2010 and 2012 at the moment. We have a report from the Lagos State Waste Management Agency, who's also speculated that over 9,000 metric tons of waste are generated daily, and with about 1.2 metric tons converted into use. These are really good figures that will tell you what's going on at the moment, and how these activities have been in recent times. We've been talking about so many good things. We will also start looking at some challenges. I know a lot of people will be wondering, oh, so what will be the challenges? We'll just look at some of the challenges. One of such will be, of course, a new government in place, so there's expected change in policies, there's expected change in administrative systems. We're still very positive that the ministers' appointments will come through, so that gives a bit of strength in the space of what is going on at the moment. So these are some of those challenges that are really affecting the industry. Of course, commitment from investors and financial collaborators is quite key. So a lot of investors are not confident enough to be in the market. So these are some of those things that I think are really causing a lot of delay. Of course, public policy environment. So slow implementation of policies. We all know, even in the petroleum industry bill, within the oil and gas side, has been a struggle. The master plan is still being worked upon, not yet implemented into full law. So these are some of the issues that have really come up. I'm sure other speakers will be able to highlight some of the challenges that we currently are facing. Power transmissions and distribution network is quite a big one, and I think this is an area in terms of the right infrastructure at the moment. Most of the activities and projects going around the renewable sector, of course, are very monopolistic because of public sector financing. The private sector still struggles to take up some of these projects by themselves. And we know security is an issue. So regional conflicts, especially in the north, which have rich resources, particularly for solar, for example. Because of all the conflicts, investors are a bit restrained on doing some of those investment opportunities there. And missing incentives. We think government should increase capacity in terms of encouraging more investors by increasing fiscal and market incentives within the industry. UKTI, maybe I should just focus on that, has been very helpful supporting UK companies, and UK Export and Finance, the UKEF, is an insurer for UK investors in overseas markets. So I think most companies or investors who are interested in the renewable sector could talk to us, and we'll be able to liaise with the UKEF for them to have these interactions. At the moment, we have about 4 companies who are actually investing in the renewable sector. One is for the solar industry, another is waste to power. We have a company who's also doing biomass at the moment, and all of these companies are currently in discussions with UKEF seeking funding and support to assess the Nigerian market. Another area which has been of strength to supporting companies who want to come to Nigeria are our VVIP market visits. Recently, we just had the retired Honorable Lord Mayor of the City of London, who was here a few weeks ago to promote strategies for companies who want to actually begin to deal in the Nigerian space. And in that visit, of course, they're supporting the rail project going on at the moment. we also had the Minister for Africa, Grant Shapps, who's particularly interested in the Nigerian renewable sector. He's also focused in providing a lot of support for for UK companies who are specifically interested in coming to the market. So these are some of the picture of what the situation is at the moment, and I think as we make progress, we'll have more people and more understanding of what the opportunities are. I hope you've enjoyed this session and you've enjoyed the presentation. At this point, without wasting more time, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Wahid. Dr. Wahid, please.
Thank you, Patricia, and good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Walid Montasser. I'm Director of IREAMS Limited, which is the consultancy based in the UK. Very interesting to hear from you, Patricia, about all these opportunities for renewable energy in Nigeria, because I believe that's the future. So I'm going to today talk about how we can utilize the waste and the sun in Nigeria. But first of all, IREAMS is a resource efficiency and environmental management company looking to utilize resources in the real world. We have worked with various organizations you can see on the screen, such as UNIDO, ASWA, and HP. Next, please. We provide a couple of services that I have provided a list here, so you can have a look at that. And please keep in touch with me. You have my email in the end of the presentation. We provide training online or in person, and also consultancy about resource efficiency, waste management, and circular economy. We also help in funding advice as well. So taking forward what Patricia was saying about the renewable energy and opportunity, so why we need the renewable energy, just to highlight what's the situation now in Nigeria. As we have seen some about the economy and the increasing economy, but there are a couple of issues that also related to the environment as well in total because of the usage of the oil. You can see some incident happen and how it can affect about the oil production and natural beauty in Nigeria, but also the continuous usage of the fossil fuels has an effect of the climate change. And Nigeria is one of the countries that can be affected by the climate change and increase, for example, in the sea level or by droughts. So you can see on the right-hand side some of the coastal areas already flooded as well due to excessive rain, or the one underneath due to the drought. You have already no rain for a long time, which can affect actually the local environment as well as the production. Another things also about the production of energy. So the next slide, you can see here an overall of the energy and electricity production in Nigeria. And I have highlighted the total energy production, which is around 118 kiloton of oil equivalent. That's mainly the major energy supply in Nigeria is coming from biomass and using off-grid resources like woods and also some of other energy sources, plus the oil. However, if you go to the next slide, please, we can see how much consumption here, because actually that amount of all the energy produced here has been taken in total. You can see the total is almost 95% is already taken over. So there is no much actually energy left even for export, despite Nigeria is one of the largest oil producers, but there will be a deficit sooner or later in energy production in Nigeria. And that's one of the issues that with the fastest economy growing, with the more need for electricity, for new projects, for new industry, the current supply at the moment and the current supply of energy will not actually help the economy. So there is a need into that. Another issue that has been highlighted as well, which a United Nations project was carried out in Nigeria a couple of years ago, asking about the power cut. So the next slide, they ask in different cities, in major cities around Nigeria, and you can see here there is issues of the electricity supply. So it's not only the energy supply itself and how much energy we can actually produce, but also the availability of that electricity per day. So imagine if you are a business and actually have a power cut, how does that affect your business? Is a huge issue. And if you are a production or a manufacturer factory or a premises, then there is an issue actually with your supply of electricity, and the dependence on that will affect your production. And therefore, there are opportunities. We need to look into other rather than what's current supply at the moment. So what are other resources we can look at? I will focus here in this presentation about two major ways of producing energy that can be uptake in Nigeria. The first one is waste, and we all know and we all have seen these pictures around. You can see on the right, on the left-hand side, how the waste can be. This is one from my latest visit to Lagos, and you can see there are around, the latest figure shows there is more than 25 million waste produced every year in Nigeria. Some of the informal market, if you can see on the right-hand side, the top picture, they do the recycling and they take the valuable materials such as plastic and metals. And Patricia already mentioned how much actually comes out as a metal from extracted from the informal market and within Nigeria. But whatever comes out after that, there are materials that you cannot recycle or reuse afterwards. People there, they cannot do anything, and that's why, hence, you can see the picture in the bottom right, which they burn all the waste, because they actually don't see any value of that. So basically, they can use the fire either to extract some of the metal from cables, for example, or they actually use it just for other uses on the side, which actually not a good in terms of losing material in the first instance. And the second thing is the health issue, because burning plastic that type or any other waste actually is carcinogenic, and it can affect the health of people around and even the near environment. So basically, we are talking about resources that is already wasted and nobody can use it. So how we can actually turn that, rather than burning that waste like this, how we can actually turn that into energy and can produce electricity. In the next slide, I have two examples, because some people actually can have a look how we can do that. So we can create energy from waste in different ways. So we have, for example, either from we burn it totally in a controlled environment, so that's incineration, or with less air, so we don't use much air. We extract some of the gases from inside the material, so that's gasification, or without any air at all, and which is pyrolysis. These are three different technologies, so it's not only burning, but we also having other ways of burning the waste itself. So in the next slide, for example, it can provide, it can give an example how actually can energy from waste can look like. So if you can see here, these are two examples from incineration of burning waste. The one on the right-hand side, it was established around 1989. This is the incineration in Vienna, and if anyone have heard or can Google that, or even go to Vienna, I would advise to go there. The chimney you can see here in the middle, that's a restaurant actually, which people can sit there, enjoy the sightseeing of Vienna, while down there is basically transferred to be an energy from waste. All the waste from Vienna goes there, burn and produce electricity, and also hot water for the nearby. The one picture on the left-hand side is basically the incineration, which if you fly from Heathrow, coming to Heathrow in the UK, this is the incinerator that provides electricity to Terminal 5, and it was built back around 2008 or 2009. Both are well-established technologies, has been there, and it provides electricity and deal with at least between we're talking about minimum 50, 80,000 tons up to 300,000 tons. This is one type of usage of waste that it already have extracted your recyclables. Now there are the material that has a calorific value, and it's already used in various places around Europe or around the world. The picture after, or the slide after, is about a different way of extracting more from material. So we have the gasification and pyrolysis, and as I mentioned, it's basically to take the oxygen or without the burning, or taken without any oxygen at all, without air. And what we take from here is basically we take a syngas, which is another byproduct we can take, and we can burn that to produce electricity. From pyrolysis even, we can transfer all the carbon material or plastic material to be like a char or ala char or ala oil, which can go and be used, for example, in the tire industry, or again can be also taken to power station to be burned. Both technologies also well established. There are many examples either in Finland or in Germany of using pyrolysis for all the residual MSW. Or municipal solid waste. And the next slide is providing another example of how the pyrolysis or gasification or energy from waste can actually have the layout. So you have all the waste coming from, if we talk from, see from the left-hand side, going all the waste coming in, then going after that to be taken to shredder, and then you take all the magnetic, all the ferrous metals, and then after that it go to the furnace, and then whatever gas or any air coming out from the furnace, it goes to on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. You can see all the air control mechanism, which is actually cleaning all the emissions. And I put here some pictures for you. You can imagine this is all the diagrams, but for the next slide, for example, that's some examples of how energy from waste or any energy from waste I mentioned before. So the next slide, please. It shows how this is some installation in the UK. So this is how the truck comes in, put all the waste, and then it goes into a really deep bunker. Then, like you can see, it has been taken to be burned on the and the burning is happening in a controlled environment, as you see on the left-hand side, the picture on the top. And then all the heat goes to turbines, which is like a normal turbines, like any power station on the bottom left-hand side. This is all how it can be seen. It's an all controlled environment. It's very efficient, and it can produce electricity for a wide range, plus hot water in some instances as well. What comes after that in the next slides is some byproducts, as I mentioned as well, like in pyrolysis and gasification. So the next slide, please. You can see in the bottom of the slide, you can see this is the picture of the char from pyrolysis, and that's how it looked like. And then it can be used, as I said, in the tire industry or any other industry, because it's other oil. Like on the top is what comes out from the ends of the incineration, like some metals which is left has been taken out, or some of the waste which is at the end of the waste after it has been burned completely. So anything is non-organic, like bricks or anything solid is left in the end, which can be used again for pavement or like road construction or road maintenance. And these are all the benefits of using energy from waste. You have already the material, rather than just burn, you can use it to produce electricity. And it varies from, in the size, as I said, from 50,000 tons a year to almost 300,000 tons a year. And the next slide is a different approach of energy from waste. So if we go there, we usually have, we all have food, we all buy and purchase food, but we all also produce food waste. So a lot of emphasis these days about food waste when we can do that. When it was a large country like in Nigeria, there is a lot of food, and as I said, 25 million tons of waste every year. About 35% of that is organic material, which is food waste. So what we can do with that? So if we continue on the slide, we have a lot of waste can be actually collected, and it goes into a really big silos like this, and it goes to microorganisms that actually can break down all the food and produce methane gas that can be used for electricity generation. And anaerobic digestion has been widely used here in the UK for all the food waste, and actually is one of the contributors to reduce the food waste going to the landfill at the moment in the UK and also in Europe. So there is also potential, and it can be also, can be a smaller scale, not like the energy from waste on a larger scale, and it can go actually from 10,000 tons to 50,000 tons per annum, and also can be on a local scale if you don't have, if you're in a local community, because anaerobic digestion has been used in like in China or in India for local, or villages for small quantities for local cooking. So this is another protein can be used in rural areas or remote areas in Nigeria as well. However, looking into the opportunities and what actually we can have energy from waste, or what we can do, there are issues that you need to be aware of when you're looking into energy from any of these technologies. So nature of the process, how to actually you're going to use the electricity, and what's your feeding material. Would you have a description of the process, how much you're going to use actually, how much tonnages you need, how much actually the reliability of that. Also the environmental legislation related to the air emissions. Here in the UK and in Europe, we have a lot of strict rules about the air emissions. In Nigeria, I believe there are a lot of legislation regards the air emissions, but in terms of energy from waste, I think that anyone who wants to look into that need to be careful with the air emissions. Final issue related to energy from waste is the costs. Anaerobic digestion is much cheaper, and then you have higher costs with pyrolysis gasification or energy from waste. However, that can be covered either by your services from collecting the waste, you have already material, but also by having electricity produced to the national grid or selling to your provider. So there are opportunities from waste, and Nigeria actually can gain a lot of opportunities with that, and that's very important to be used in the near future. So we talked about the waste, which is a lot of opportunities there, but also the sun, which is free actually to use. So I was reading one of the reports about Nigeria and potential use of solar panels in Nigeria. If Nigeria actually used some of the sun, 1% of the land to produce electricity from the sun, it actually can produce over 200,000 gigawatt per year. So it's a lot of potential there, but it's which type of solar? There are various actually. So you actually can use other solar energy, can use it directly to produce electricity, which we call it photovoltaic, or we can use it to produce heat. So we use it to the thermal, solar thermal to produce electricity. So in terms of how are these different? Normally, as you can see here, this is the normal how the thermal in domestic. So how we can do hot water for the house. So the sun already comes out, it heats the house. So we just put like a panel to collect the heat and have like a water storage to heat the water and use it domestically. And there are two types of using actually the to use the solar panels. The first one, if we just have a click on that, is the flat plate collector. This one is basically that's the evacuated tube collector, which is basically some tubes are evacuated, just have a copper wire inside, is heated very quickly by the sun, and then that heated wire heat another liquid, and then the heat can be used to heat the water storage tank underneath. The picture on the bottom is the flat plate collector. Is basically use the liquid itself, like the water, to be heated. So use the sun as like the picture on the left-hand side to heat the water and use that. Both has different. They are really good. The top one, which is the evacuated tube, are much more expensive, but both are actually reliable and has been used for domestic usage around houses here in Europe. In the next slide is we're talking about the thermal in terms of commercial. This is using the big mirrors around, as you can see in the pictures, to collect the heat of the sun, and then it's collected in one tower in the middle, and that heat can be used to produce heat to heat the water, and from there you can actually produce electricity. This type of solar thermals has been used. So if we click on the next picture on the slide, is actually an example of the. In Spain, they have the Solnova 4 different types of power generator using the solar thermal in Spain, in the southern Spain, in Granada. And it has been different between 11 megawatt up to 50 megawatt electricity production. But as you can see, this is used a larger scale. This one, for example, you see in the picture here. Yes, thank you. This one is almost about 120 square meter minimum for each unit. So these are using the thermal itself, the heat to heat water, having some hot water, or having hot water to have to get the electricity through turbines. The other one is directly to using the PV panels. There are different types like porocrystalline, photovoltaic, monocrystalline, and the thin film. Without going into details, it's basically the difference between how the cells are actually, and the silicon cells, which is produce the electricity, is lie down within the panel itself, and there are difference in their production and the efficiency and cost as well. But each one is it depends about the usage and where it's going to be located. But in terms of how actually the solar panel are actually producing, so basically you get the sun heat. So we click on the next, so we can see the next picture. You get the sun as actually you have electrodes from the silicon inside the panels, take all the electricity. I think that goes here, and then after that, it can be either used to convert from a direct current to used to be an AC, and then from there it can be used either inside on the site, whether it's your house, your factory, or it goes to the it goes out to the national grid. This technology has been now going cheaper and cheaper due to the government around the world actually support. So the cost of the solar panels actually went dramatically in the last 5 years, more than 90% originally when it was in 2005, and there has been a lot of increase. So next slide, we can see a lot of increase of usage of solar panels, either over the houses in a small scale. No, I think it's the previous slide. This slide is to show you the difference between different type of solar panels and the efficiency and the electricity production. So some of them are really high in electricity production, some are lower, but again, it depends about where you're going to use that. And as I mentioned, some of them are actually can be the solar panels put on the top of the houses or in the farms. However, again, just continuing what Patricia was saying about how the key elements of we can take uptake in that is basically there are a couple of issues you need to be aware of that. So, for example, if you're going to use solar panels like the PV, is the location. So if you can see, these are pictures from Lagos, for example. If you have high-rising building, how are you going to install, how much you can install, and how many panels you can install on the top of that. If you have houses development like down there, yes, you can install that, and then you can have an access. So what is the location and which part and you need to face the sun, which way is the sun is coming out, and where is the sunset as well, because at the end of the day, we are using the sun. The other issue which is has been touched by Patricia as well is the feed-in tariff. Within Europe, the government support the electricity production through solar panels by paying for any excessive energy coming from your solar panels in your house or your facility. But that's how that will be in Nigeria. There are some mechanism, and the mechanism coming through under the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commissions or the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company. They are the two major players at the moment there. However, in a larger scale, if you're going to use, for example, the thermal solar panel, solar facility, you need to look into the for example, the multi-year tariff order, which has been done by NERC, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, because that's very important to negotiate that and how much you're going to take per kilowatt produced. Also, I haven't seen when I looked at that, and I think this is need to be approached as well, which is renewable heat intensive, and how much you're going to take, for example, the heat and the steam as well coming out. Where you're going to put the solar panel, the maintenance, many of them are really low maintenance, doesn't need anything, but whether the local authority will allow you to give you some planning and the cost for that. Without further notice, thank you very much for your listening. I'm happy to take questions in the end of your presentation or afterwards. Thank you. Thank you, Patricia.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Walid, for that wonderful presentation, very detailed. Going forward, I'd like to quickly introduce Adrian Close, who's going to be talking of his experience in Nigeria. Adrian, please.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Adrian Clues. I'm the Managing Director of Hinckley Associates Nigeria Limited. I'm just waiting for my slide. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. No. So Hinckley has been in Nigeria since 1998. We were formerly working as an ICT solutions provider for the oil and gas sector. In 2000, we became a HP partner, and we set up the first HP service center in Nigeria, in Lagos. Since then, we've expanded across the country in cities including Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. 4 years ago, we endeavored on setting up a new business venture, tackling the problem of e-waste in Nigeria, working closely initially with HP. We identified that there was no existing e-waste facility in the country, and in fact in the whole of North Africa. However, the e-waste was becoming a growing concern for not only HP but also the other multinational OEMs such as Dell and Lenovo, IBM, all facing the same challenge of what happens at the end of life for their electronics in the country. Next slide, please. So just to talk about Hinckley's experience, Hinckley is a British-owned company incorporated in Nigeria, and since 1998, obviously, we've experienced various challenges in Nigeria, most of which have been touched on already a little bit in this presentation, but certainly lack of infrastructure is an issue when setting up business here, and lack of power has been spoken about extensively today. Legislation has also been touched on, and of course corruption. We can't get away from that topic. It's an issue which we face daily, and lack of highly skilled labor force, and of course the high poverty rates within the country. Despite this, there are opportunities for investors in Nigeria, obviously, and there are various facilities available to investors to try and help them get started in Nigeria, and also ensure their business is sustainable in the country. The government do have schemes such as Pioneer Status Grants, which allows you to become tax exempt for a period of time, up to, I believe, 10 years. There are free trade zones now in Nigeria as well, in Lagos and also in Onne. Nigeria is predominantly English-speaking, certainly no language barriers here. There is an abundance of resource, particularly human resource, although, as I say, difficult to find highly skilled labor, although that is improving. But there you can take advantage, obviously, dependent upon your type of business, of the low labor rates. You can get land discounts as well, particularly for our project, which involves the environment. There are various federal and state schemes in place if you are purchasing land. And of course, most importantly, repatriation of profits, getting your money out of the country. So there are also systems in place to achieve that. Nigeria has huge market opportunities across all sectors, but particularly in the energy sector. Obviously, huge opportunity there for investors to come in, and that's been well supported by UKTI and the British government as a whole, and also the Nigerian government. There are several funding pots available, particularly, as I say, for companies who want to come into Africa, into Nigeria, and provide solutions within the environment sector. Certainly Hinckley has been working with some of these organizations, including the World Bank and the DFID. And I know the DFID have been very supportive of particularly solar panel projects in the country, and spoken to some of other investors coming in, and they've certainly benefited from that. So in terms of going back to e-waste in the area that we're working, it's very clear that there's huge volumes of e-waste being generated in Nigeria, approximately 250,000 tons per year. This is obviously accumulated through various different e-waste streams, including mobile phones, computers, and white goods, etc., and refrigerants and AC units. This particular graph just shows the laptop and desktop importation figures in Nigeria within a 12-month period. Nigeria is the largest market for HP outside of South Africa, and of course we know Nigeria is also the largest economy in Africa now. So huge volumes of electronics coming into the country, and as I say, huge volumes of e-waste also being generated, with currently no solution in place to manage it. So if we go to the next slide. Some of the areas I'm working on currently, some of our next steps, is we are developing a legislative framework for managing e-waste in Nigeria. And this, again, has really been aided by the UKTI. They've assisted us in setting up meetings with the relevant government officials within the Ministry of Environment, and also within their enforcement agency. In fact, the UKTI not only helped arrange these meetings, they also came with us to these meetings as well to support us and try and put in a legislative framework with the Nigerian government. Also, in terms of alignment of key stakeholders, trying to get everybody working together. Again, UKTI have played a role here. In fact, only this week, Monday, we had an event at the British High Commission where we had the Nigerian government, but also private sector, oil and gas, manufacturing, telecoms, banking, as well as OEMs and importers coming to the event, a one-day event, and where we will be able to discuss the issues of e-waste and also raise awareness for the problem, and also inform stakeholders of forthcoming legislation. We're obviously trying to develop the market. It's a new market for us. It's fairly niche for Nigeria, although very well established in the UK, as we know. The next phase for us now is to actually start implementing the infrastructure for the facility, and then we'll be looking to look for some new investors thereafter to try and expand the operation in Nigeria. So that's really just a snapshot of my experience here and how we've worked with UKTI in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for that beautiful presentation. That was really very expressive of your experience in Nigeria. I would like to take the Q&As at the moment, so if you have the questions, you could quickly let us know, and we'll be ready to give you some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. We are now going to begin answering the questions submitted to today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. So let me have a look for the questions. Yes, there are some questions. One is, I am looking to start a solar or wind farm. Are there any financial support mechanisms specifically for startup companies, and what advice would be available in comparison to the Nigerian renewable industry? So,
okay, thank you for that question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for the question again. The first question, which talks about support for startup businesses, I mentioned in my presentation that at the moment we're working very closely with UKEF. UKEF is the UK Export Finance Group, and they actually operate in the name of Export Credit Guarantee Department. They've been a standalone government department, and they've provided a lot of financial support for UK companies. So I think the UKEF is quite very strong. Another group we're working with, which one of the speakers mentioned, is DFID. They're actually doing huge work and support around solar. So I think support can come from there. Did you mention the second question?
We have one more question. Yeah. Second question is, does concentrated solar power have a future in sub-Saharan Africa?
Okay, I think solar market is quite big in sub-Saharan Africa, especially if we have to focus in Nigeria. The federal government objective, of course, is to increase the capacity by 2020. I mentioned that in the presentation, and this mix is, with private sector and public as well. So I think there's huge opportunity and prospects for solar in Nigeria. Like I mentioned before in one of the slides, they're actually looking at increasing capacity, so meeting the goals of over 500 megawatts of PV and solar thermal. So it's quite huge, the demand at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. So let me have a look for some more questions. There's another question. Another question is, what are the subsidies supporting solar energy development in Nigeria? I think that's a good question for Dr. Wahid Montasser.
Thank you very much. I think there are a couple at the moment. The mechanism is not clear because there are different stakeholders within Nigeria. As I mentioned in my presentation, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, for example, or the Nigerian Public Electricity Trading Company. But also I can mention as well that the Ministry of Environment in Nigeria has already renewable energy program, and they have an incentive for investment in solar panels. So, for example, there are some tax relief as company income tax to start with solar panels if you're going to start for larger solar panels as well, or there are some capital allowance. In terms of looking into how much is the feeding-in tariff, I mentioned that as well in my presentation. There are some feeding-in tariff by NERC, the Nigerian Electricity Regulation Commission, but again, it comes to a multi-year tariff order discussion and documentation coming from them. So there are some potential there. It just needs to be discussed with the right stakeholders.
Thank you, Dr. Wahid. And next question is a general question about the presentation. Is it possible to get the copy of a presentation, Patricia?
We plan to send all of the presentations to the companies who've registered, so we'll be able to send that across.
Excellent. Thank you. Having a look for more questions. Yes, there are some. Thank you for this to the audience. And I think the next question is for Dr. Wahid again. The question is from somebody from the Green Solutions Worldwide. Renewable energy projects like biomass or biogas can supply their products like electricity, gas, and heat directly to the national grid with guaranteed incentives from the government. The question now is, how could this work in Nigeria, where there is no clearly defined operational national grid? And the second part of the question is Nigerian government planning to incentive renewable energy generator? If yes, what is the guarantee for such incentive?
Okay, these are really good questions. And especially the second one, I do understand about the guarantee. with the new government, and I believe with the new policies, as Patricia mentioned in her presentation, there are a lot of potential to support the incentives. And as I mentioned, that the government itself already working on a renewable energy program to support all the new renewable energy projects in Nigeria. So there are potential, especially with the income tax relief as well. And in terms of the first part of the question about the operational or the national grid in relation to sell the electricity, I do understand, because there are some issues about the electricity and the national grid there. However, I believe that working with the Nigerian bulky electricity trading company and the national grid there, you don't have to sell your electricity directly to the national grid. You may be able to sell it as well to your direct customer, especially if you are in the rural areas. It's just, again, as I mentioned, because there are many stakeholders, it's basically how to speak to which stakeholders. There are too many working around to help with the renewable energy intensive in Nigeria at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Wahid Montaser, for this answer. We have 2 more questions, which we will take now and then close the webinar. Next question is the moratorium on duties current, or is it a future policy? A question for Patricia.
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Reid. I will say yes at the moment, because from looking at the UKTI perspective, we've actually been involved with some companies who's taking a bit of some projects to some really high level, where they're bringing in some of these technologies, especially within the solar industry. We even had to organize a reception and a kind of workshop for them. So these technologies were actually brought in and displayed, and people saw that. So we worked with most of all those departments, and of course the import duties were initiated. So it's live.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Splendid. Patricia, thanks a lot. And the last question for the day is from Jafar. The question is, what is the current situation in Nigeria regarding protection and enforcement of intellectual property rights and patents for renewable energy products? I think it's for Adrian.
I can't answer that question, unfortunately. I haven't approached the government to register any patents with them regarding renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
Patricia, perhaps you can help answer that.
Patricia? I can't hear you properly at the moment. Yeah, now again. Yeah, thanks. Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, fine.
Okay, quite a very sensitive question, though. But what I can say is that, of course, we're working closely with these departments regarding protection and enforcement of these intellectual property rights. There are laws that actually support these, but because some of these policies are not really being in place, so they've been a bit little here or there, but we could say they're ongoing. But with the help of what we're doing at the moment, we give all the support to ensure that the current situation is being improved.
Excellent, Patricia. Thank you very much for this answer. So thank you everyone for attending today's webinar.
The question that came true.
Oh, there's one more question? Okay, thanks a lot, Patricia.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question is, let me check. How much waste is generated in Lagos, PH, and Abuja?
And on the top of my head, I don't have the numbers at the moment. But I believe in total in Nigeria it's 25 million per year, and I think Lagos as having a large amount of that, maybe between 5 and 7 million tons a year. But again, I'm happy to look into that. The problem with the data about waste is a bit sometimes not accurate. So it comes from different research and different universities. There is no official actually numbers coming from the government at the moment. They are all estimate, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Appreciate it, Dr. Walid Montaser. Actually, that was the end of today's webinar. So thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, The Next Big Steps to Maximize Opportunities in the Nigeria Renewable Sector. If you have any other questions, please contact UKTI. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of UKTI and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your day.